have Bharat over here. Bharat, over to you. You can start the session.
Everyone, hello everyone, I'm Bharat. I request everyone to be mute. I'll be starting in a minute, please. Okay, everyone, let's start with this session right now. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the insightful session on decoding personal data privacy and security with the DPDP Act 2023. We at ARTpark are committed to empower and upskill the startup ecosystem with knowledge, insights, networks, and resources. We're thrilled to have Mr. Anjing V. Loda, partner Ketan and advisor at Nuvo. Ajira began her legal career with Herbert Smith Freehills in London. She joined Ketan in in 2012. In 2013, she had cleared Delhi Judicial Service examination with a rank of 23, but continued to choose legal practices as her career path. She advises on corporate, commercial, employment, and IP matters, specializing in structuring, investment, and joint venues and legal documentation. Alongside Anjira ma'am, we have Mr. Sauraraj, co-founder of Nuvo, a blockchain expert. Saurav focuses on using blockchain and NFTs to innovate business and finance, improving transparency and efficiency across the industries. We are privileged to have both the esteemed speakers share their expertise on our platform and provide actionable insights for ideators and innovators. Before we begin, let me quickly set the agendas for today's session. Speakers will share their insights and strategies for approximately 35 minutes. This will be followed by a live question and answer session where the main discussion and interaction will begin, where you can also ask questions directly. The webinar will conclude with some actionable takeaways, closing remarks, and a lot of confidence to safeguard your data. We'll also have hard stop at 7:15 p.m. today. So if you don't get a chance to speak during the session, please do write in the chat box, and we'll try to address as many as possible during the Q&A. Please make sure you post your questions in the chat box while the session is going on. With further ado, let's welcome Mr. Sauraraj and Mr. Anjira Singhvi Lodha to virtual state. Mr. Saurav, over to you.
Right. So, good evening, everyone, and it's wonderful to meet all of you together. I'm happy to, see ARTpark coming, ahead to address one of the most significant topics, which is affecting a lot of people today, not only in India but all around the world as well, which is related to your own personal data, data privacy, and how it affects you. Of course, we understand in 2023 there is a bill which has been introduced in the Parliament, and subsequent implementations will happen. But as you know, with the introduction of each new legislation bill, there's a lot of work which needs to be done, and the first of it begins with understanding what the implications are with respect to the common people, the way we do business. How does it affect it? How does it change? So, with that, we have our legal expert here, and she advises us on so many topics, Ms. Sangeeta Singhvi. I'll start the screen sharing, and she will take you through the bill, what it means, what are the important factors we have to consider as an individual and as an organization as well, who leads or which is involved in data collection or data processing for say, right? Once that is done, then we will look at a little bit of how and what the technology implementation is. We'll not focus a lot on that today, and we will go on that and then open up to Q&A. I'm also happy to share with the rest of everyone that we have our second co-founder, Smriti. She's on the call as well. I can see her, and we have one of our other advisors from the financial services sector, Mr. Vikash, also joining us. So thank you everyone for our entire team to be here. And with that, we will start the session today. So just give me a second, and we'll initiate the presentation.
Is the screen visible to everyone?
Yes, it's visible.
Hi, so thank you, Saurav, and thank you, ARTpark, for having us over. And we would like to keep it as crisp and short as possible to be able to maintain your interest in the topic. I understand this is a topic where possibly we are supposed to have stakeholders, where you could be a customer who's sharing his information over the digital platforms, because sharing information over digital platforms for verification, for getting as simple as your online deliveries, is a very, very common thing that we all do. And the other set of target audience that we might have here is the data processors and the data the data fiduciaries, basically people who are in the business of managing data. So yes, trying to build in the bridge between the two parties and seeing what the act has to offer in terms of managing this bridge. Now, what this act, or I would rather say bill, mentions is that, or protects, is digital information, which is personal data, to restrict its circulation in a manner which is in your control and is used for lawful purposes only. So, for example, when you share your information over a digital network, the Act regulates who can access it, how can it be accessed, and how is it to be destructed ultimately. If we look into the provisions of the Act, we see that there are various obligations. If you look at point 2 of this chart, you see there are various obligations of a data fiduciary. I will come to it later as to what is a data fiduciary. There are rights and duties of various bodies. And then there are, of course, penalties. I will not mention the not so important topics which would be otherwise interesting, but the stakeholders you are concerned would be interested in these three subtopics only, I believe. So, what is a data principle? It could be you, me, any person who is providing or sharing his or her data over an online platform in a digital manner is a data principle. If you want, if it is my credit card, it could be any other information that belongs to me, I am a data principle, I own it. Then there is another party which is called a data fiduciary. So in a very simple case where any of us wants a loan from a bank, so the bank here is the person to whom the information is going for the purpose of, say, verification whether the loan can be granted to you. So your income tax details, your salary slips, all of that. The person who gets this information for its ultimate utilization, which is the bank in this case, would be a data fiduciary. And the party who is obtaining that information on behalf of the bank and sharing with the bank, processing it to see whether you meet the criteria that have been set out by the bank, is the data processor. Now, when, yes, of course, we're all talking about data, how privacy is not being maintained and how it impacts us on a regular basis. But what is this data that is protected? Data that this bill protects is basically personal data. And personal data is something which can be identified to a person. A person, so for example, this is personal data. My date of birth, my bank account, my PAN, my registration numbers, this is all personal data. Very wide, if I look at it, I can immediately identify that yes, this is PAN of Angira Singhvi. There is a picture there, there is my name, and there is the number. So that is my personal data. Now, when I deal with personal data,
Avya could have never is telling that life is long.
Yeah.
sorry.
Dear all, we request you to mute your speakers, please.
Okay, so I'll continue.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am. Over to you.
No problem, ma'am. Thank you for the clarification. Yeah. So now what happens is when I am sharing my data online, that belongs to me and nobody else can use it if I don't want that particular information to be used in the manner for which I'm sharing. So I now, by the coming of this DPDP Act, as a data principal, have all the rights to control my data or my personal information. Now, for example, how do I do that? So any data principal or a data fiduciary, which the example that I've already explained, is wanting to process my data, obtain my data, process and then utilize in a particular manner. Now I can again use the example of that bank who wants to grant me a loan. If I'm giving my information for that particular purpose that the bank can validate my details and assess whether I'm a loan worthy candidate or not, it can only do so. And this is the only thing that it can do with with my information. And if I do not, at any point in time, if I want that information should be destroyed, it has to be destroyed. So this act does give me a lot of power to be able to ensure that my information is not floating in the air on the internet. And that is regulated by way of consent. Now, what happens is when my data is being sought by the data processor or the fiduciary, they have to give me a notice as to in what conditions and how will they use my data. They can name it. For example, again, the bank. I'm just using one example so that we can link it, right? Instead of jumping on other series of different examples. So what happens is if they are saying that they will use my PAN card details for the purpose of verifying as to how much income tax or what is my return status, how much do I file every year, which they would otherwise take it in a hard copy. They cannot then sell my data to, say, a delivery or a Zomato, because unless they obtain my specific consent. So when you look into the privacy policies or the data management systems of these entities now, they have to clearly mention as to who they can share this data with, and how will this be processed. If you do not agree to it, you can very well retract to the age-old system of giving a physical copy, which can never be used anywhere else. So it's completely in your control now. So this notice, the rules have even gone on to specify as to how this can be used, what language does it have to have, and you should have a clear right to withdraw your consent. It also, so these rules now, they've not come into force right now. They are still into the stage of representation by the public. So the government has published it. They are inviting comments from the public until the 18th. So if any of you have any concerns that will impact your business or as a person, we can definitely look at the rules, give a representation to the government that this is how it has to be amended. And please look into a recommendation, which the government seems to be open to listening. Now, these rules also mention as to how a consent manager has to be appointed. So the Act mentions that there has to be a party who has to be appointed by every data fiduciary to be able to manage how a data owner or a data principal manages the consent. How they take it, what do they do with it, how they destroy it. This is all done by a regulated company, which can be incorporated by any of us who want to get into this business and manage consent and data for our clients. Now, of course, if we are handling sensitive personal data, we do have a lot of obligations under law to make sure that we are not leaking it. And the law is also making sure that there are adequate safeguards, that anyone who has possession of information does not go out and leak it. Now, for example, even the consent manager, for that matter, does not have access to information under law. And you have to maintain specific security measures so as to not leak information about any person, for that matter. Now, there are certain situations where the government has carved out exceptions where your specific consent is not required. And why is that? I'll come to that. While you are the owner of your information, to be able to extend benefits to you, or some policies to you, or deal with emergencies, one cannot expect that those parties should go through that consent process altogether and hinder the facilities that one needs to provide or an emergency situation that one needs to tackle. So in these cases, the government has allowed that without taking a personal consent, one can proceed with providing or rendering the services. As I said, for fulfilling obligations under law, for complying with decrees, or for dealing with emergency situations, just as examples. Now, coming to the obligations of a data fiduciary. Data fiduciary, as I said, is the person who is collecting that information for a particular purpose. That has to come through them through a specific, clear consent that has been given by the principal. That data has to be erased from the systems as soon as the purpose is accomplished. So, for example, if the loan has been disbursed to me and my income tax details are no longer to be required, it has to be erased from the systems altogether. They also have to have specific agreements with the processors, whereby they take obligations, or they impose obligations that the data processors also cannot play hanky-panky with the information that is being shared. As a person who is putting data on the internet, of course, we all know how risky it is. We keep seeing in the news that something is getting hacked or something is being used without my permission. As a data principal, I do have a right to file with a case with the particular authorities, or have a right to request the person who has my information to delete it immediately and withdraw my consent, even for the purpose for which I've given in the past. So, the consent that I give for usage of my information can always be withdrawn at any point. So, if we look into the consequences of how this is being managed and how seriously the government is taking it, we can immediately look at the kind of penalties that the government is planning to enforce. So basically, the penalties can go up to as high as 250 CR, and regular violations of the rules and acts can start from 50 CR also. It's not that it starts from 50 CR, but for smaller offenses, it can go up to 50 CR. So it's not that it is a very inconsequential violation that one can freely undertake, because till now what happens is what has gone in the public, or what has gone to a bank or a financial institution or Zomato or anyone, we all know that it can be used for any purpose and we don't even bother, because we feel that once it's gone in the public domain, it's gone. So it can be used for anything. Our Aadhaar card numbers are anywhere floating around. So to be able to secure our details and secure, for example, hacking of our bank accounts, hacking of our emails, this is something that is expected to come with a revolution in securing one's personal information. And we've also seen examples in the other countries where GDPR or other acts have come into place in Europe, US, Singapore. They're very strict about it. So the instances of hacking and leakage have reduced quite a bit. And we're hoping the same in India also, so that our information is not just floating around on the internet like it does as of now. And it does have some remedies. Over to you, Saurabh.
Right, good. So thank you, Angita, for that. What I'll do now is just see if there are any questions from the audience before we start to discuss the next topic. If you have, just please address it in the chat, or you can raise your hands and we can bring you up on the stage. Going forward, so now once you understand what the law is, what it does, the big question is always there, that what do we do with it, and how do we comply with it, or how do we implement the law, and the next set of questions come to the mind, right? So there, what I wanted to share is a brief outline on what we have been doing, right? And hopefully that will share some perspectives into what this could actually mean, right? When you say data should come with consent, and so on and so forth. So what actually that means for all of us on a day-to-day basis, right? So this is what we say. It's India's that is the solution which we have. Consent-based data exchange, right? That is the cornerstone of what we are trying to implement with the solution. Of course, it's in early stages, and we would love to get your feedback also on there. I will not go into the details of what actually happens, but why it is relevant, and why we are doing it, the purpose behind the mission, and what we want to achieve with this, right? So as we have seen, we now live in a data consent protocol, and that's one of the biggest and the most significant change which is about to come, right? About 10-15 years ago, when we talked about financial inclusion, right? When we talked about UPI, when we talked about Jan Dhan Bank, when we talked about all of these things, empowerment not only in the cities, in the metros, but tier 1, tier 2, and to the last mile, to our remote villages, right? So that was one wave which went. Today, I believe the wave is not about just financial literacy, but today the biggest impact which will have on society is about data literacy, right? And what can you do with your data, and what value the data holds, right? I mean, you might have heard about the concept called data is oil. But where if it does not managed properly, then there is no value to it, right? And then it just goes to waste. Yeah. And this is where, in some sort of way, what we are trying to achieve. I'm forgetting all the commercial aspect of it. I mean, if you look at it, right, this is the audience. In spite of all the challenges that you see, and all the advancements that has happened in terms of digitization in India, right? This is still a challenge, right? I mean, when you go down to the last mile, this is a number which is published. Even 20% of the ATMs are located in these areas, which has 65% of the population. So that's a big number. That's a huge, big disparity, right? And when you talk about the demographics, which includes women, right? 50% of them, over 50%, do not have access to mobile phone. So now, if I bring you back to the theory which said that to operate your mobile phone or for everything, I mean, to operate your bank accounts and financial inclusion, you needed three things, right? You needed a Aadhaar, you needed a mobile app or a mobile device, smartphone, and you needed a bank account. Now you have Aadhaar, you have the bank account, the Yojana has come and everyone has been registered based on the Aadhaar, and there is PAN card linking and a bunch of stuff has happened. But not everyone has a mobile phone, so which means you lack the access to your own account, which means you cannot operate it, which means it's just redundant, it's non-performing, right? And that is where the challenge is. While the big wave came following the introduction of Aadhaar and everyone getting registered and everything, we have still failed to achieve the inclusion. It has not happened, right? Because one of the primary things in that entire scheme was having a mobile phone, which people don't have, right? Yes, it has helped. Mobile phone penetration is there, internet is there, but it has not led us to 80, 90% or, in that zone, right? And that is where we come to the challenges today, right? So what we say, what do we present, and how do we tackle it, right? So first is, for any financial services to come, it could be, bank account opening is a simple exercise, but you talk about loans, you talk about insurances. Insurance penetration is one of the least, about just under 5%. I mean, 3.5, 4, it's pushing, but we don't have insurance for everyone in India, right? So to do that, what do? You need data first, right? You need to have access to data. You need a mechanism and a method to share the data with the provider, right? So the first thing which you provide out of Nuvo is your personalized data wallet, right? And that is a data wallet, just like your wallet of money, right? This is wallet of data. It has data across multiple, documents or types of data, right? Which we look at the next stage on the next slide, what kind of data it captures, right? But it can be personal, your health data, your financial data, linkages, right? Not all of it has to be on the app, but some of it is linked, right? So that is one. The next is the consent layer. Of course, everything has to pass to a consent, and we'll share a bit of examples on what the consent looks like, right? How it is, and what information. Just like we heard, there are certain information which should be presented, right? So when you are transferring data, when you're ready to do that, do you have all the information necessary to understand if you should transfer the data or not, right? And of course, the next interesting thing is what we call as the zero knowledge compute. And this is a very interesting example here, right? In many European countries, and now in fact in India also, there are cases where, let's say you have to go to a restaurant and they serve alcohol, and I'm just quoting an example here. You have to present an age verification. Sometimes it's there, right? Now, you might have seen it even in the movies as well. The students will come and they'll present a fake ID, and they can go in. But how can you actually, without exposing too much of data, just do the age verification? Even your Aadhaar card has your date of birth written. It does not give you the age instantly. So the person who's standing there has to calculate it, right? Your driver license could have the same. Similarly, right? So zero knowledge means that while you do not have the date of birth information, you can still verify the age, which is the information you need. You don't need the date of birth, you need the age. For example, if you're trying to check if a person is above 18, you just want to know if it's 19 or if it's 17 or 16, right? You don't need to know the exact date of birth. So that is where zero knowledge compute is, right? So without having access to the data, you can have a computational value which you can evaluate. So instead of sending your entire Aadhaar card, you just transfer the value of age, right? Which we can calculate on top of Aadhaar card. So this is where you see this is a little bit above and beyond what DigiLocker can do, right? DigiLocker is just a document repository. It's an alternative to Google Drive for certain government issues, certificates, and academic records and other stuff, right? But what about the other data? It's lying everywhere else, right? Which brings me to this picture, which shows the kind of and the expanse of data types that we are trying to capture. I mean, we have looked at a sort of how much data or a digital footprint belongs to a user, and how can we categorize it, right? Because then we can build a system around it, and then we can scale it, right? So start with identity. That's a common one. Then you have your work. You might be working in a company. You might be interning. You might be a contract. You can be on permanent hire. Various things, right? For many of us, we have LinkedIn, we have company records, but imagine a larger population, which is blue collar workers. They typically don't have a LinkedIn sort of a format where they can go and present a resume. It's very difficult for them, right? So how do we do that? I mean, they do not. I mean, after 6 years of work, they leave company A and then go home for 6 months and come back. I mean, how do they present a resume that I have worked in such and such company? Best is they might get a relieving letter from the previous one, a piece of paper which they might store it, but that's again, exposed to damage, right? The paper can get destroyed. Yeah. Academic credentials, yes, there's quite a bit of it. Other than your certificates, most of your cultural achievements, sports, awards, I mean, it's probably lying in a folder somewhere, which is not always feasible to present. And even if you present it, there's no way to authenticate or verify it. Many times it happens when people are sitting across interviews, you're looking at candidates, right? How do you verify if someone has won a first prize in 100 meters or in a singing or a business pitch planning competition? I mean, certificates can be printed very easily, right? I mean, so these are challenges. You see, there are challenges of authentication, there are challenges towards issuance, and the biggest challenges towards verifying the authenticity of a data or a credential which has been provided, right? So while we just talk about data and data consent and privacy, there are various other factors also which are related, and that is why the topic is complex, and that is why it will need a little bit of time to get there. And we were very grateful for to ARTtalks for kind of taking the lead and the leap in this direction and setting the stage early on for all of us to get educated, right? Now we move to some of the other formats of data, which is financial data, bank account statements, your mutual fund investments, your insurance, right? So there is a program from RBI which is under implementation. It's a technology solution, which is the account aggregator. And as the name says, it aggregates all your information from different accounts and then bundles it together, right? So that was the first so-called good implementation of a consent-based data exchange. So of course, it's many of the things in India start with the financial sector, and then other sectors sort of implement it. And that brings me to the next one, which is your medical history. So many of you may have heard about Ayushman Bharat, right? It's a similar to your financial, like your UPI, ID for linking to your bank account. What Ayushman Bharat does is there is Abha ID, Ayushman Bharat, the Abha ID is there, which gives you a similar UPI-like address, and all your medical visits, transcripts, your doctor-patient consultations, reports, X-rays, they can be linked to it. Which means now you can carry it for secondary consultations. You can carry it together. Otherwise, most of the time is lying in a file or a folder, and of course you lose track. Right? Over time, you move to 2-3 places, you shift from one city to the other, the file goes away, and then you have lost all your medical history. Right? Imagine a scenario where you're traveling between different countries, right, and you have to present your vaccination certificate. You can all imagine and look at how many of you have your vaccination record ready today to actually show if you have received hepatitis A, B, C doses, if you have received a tetanus dose at some point of time. I mean, I don't have it today. I mean, to be very fair, right? So these are challenges when you travel across, when you have to present, when you have to authenticate, right? I mean, how do you have access to? You don't have access to that data, right? It's very, very difficult. So that is what the first thing which we try to do is bring that together, right? Make it easy, make it available, make it convenient for a user to access and own their own data, right? And then, of course, we move on to some of the difficult ones, which is assets. I mean, you are owner in a property, you are a tenant, you are residing in temporary. It could be on a lease, commercial lease to an office space, it's very difficult, right? Real estate transactions and frauds are prevalent, right? Someone might have sold a piece of property 3 times over. People have bought it because they are not able to authenticate the ownership in a reasonable amount of time frame. This happens everywhere, not only in India but across the world. It's a very common problem, right? So ownership of assets, right? Again, it's a piece of data, it's personal information, it's investment information. Again, there has to be methods to easily authenticate, present, verify, this kind of data, right? And finally, your social engagements, memberships, right? So what we do is we bring all of it together, right? And then we put it together, and there comes a solution, right? So what you have is, for users, we give you one of the best cases, a mobile application which you can use. But you might be thinking now that I talked about 10 minutes ago that 50% of the women in rural area don't have mobile phones. So what do we do for them? Right? That is where it becomes interesting. What you see at the center of the screen is our smart card, right? Which is something like this. So this is a smart card which actually links to your data wallet in the background, right? Just the way you can use your debit card or a credit card to transfer money, right, from your bank account to a merchant or anywhere you're buying or shopping, right? In a similar way, if you don't have a smartphone, there is a way to link this smart card, right, to your data, right, and which again will link to your DigiLocker, and which can link to your bank account data, and which can link to your Aadhaar ID, and many other forms of data, in case you don't have access to your mobile phone, right? And that is how you can still transact and share data with the other party, right? Which could be a data consumer, right? On the other, we call it consumer in a simple language parlance, but I mean the legal word is slightly different, right? So data consumer is anyone who consumes data, right? Who needs data? It could be a bank, it could be a fintech, it could be an insurance company, it could be a hotel where you're checking in, right? That could be as simple as someone who needs to access your data, right? So this is what the solution is, right? This is what it does. Smart cards, like we discussed, and to just show you how it actually works, if you see right side of the screen, there's actually on the mobile app. So what happens is, as soon as you bring the phone to a data terminal, which is a smart data terminal in this sense, which is based on mobile app, does not need anything fancy, you can transact with data using this smart card, right? I'll show you an example in a real one in just a few seconds, just to see if I have something else. This is the team I talked about. Of course, Smriti is there. I'm there present. Vikas sir is present here in the conversation as well, and of course, you heard quite a bit from Angira as well. So Vikram, additionally, is from SP Jain. Supports our team as well. Sharath is there from the blockchain industry, and then we have additional members in our team, Neha and Prerna, who are supporting us with strategic partnerships as well. Right? It has won several awards, so that's a big question. And the reason to show this is, while we're building in a very early stage, there are challenges to it. Of course, the biggest one is the knowledge and awareness with people of what data privacy actually means, what it is, right? So it takes a bit of time, yes, but we have reached a point where today the bill has been introduced and there are multiple implementations happening, right? And we're happy to say that today we are in discussions to implement this solution across at least 450,000, which is about 450,000 plus user base. And this has been discussions going on over the last 45 to 60 days, right? So this is now actually happening. This is not something in concept, but it's actually happening. And with that, I would like to switch and just show how one of these solutions actually work. So I'll switch the screen sharing, and then in meantime, if you have questions, please drop them here, and then we will look at it, right? So what I'll do is I'll stop the screen sharing from here.
Sir, I think we have like two questions. We can take it right now, or maybe we can like take it after the complete presentation.
Sure.
What?
Yeah. So I'll just do this. It takes another
Sure.
2 to 3 minutes
Sounds
just to do it, and then we
Yeah.
can switch to the question and answer.
Sure.
Right? So this is an example of what you're seeing on the screen is the mobile application. right? And like I said, what you saw on the screen as well. So the moment I do this scan, right, and I have this smart card with me, the one which I showed, I do this, and you'll see some data appears, right? And this is as seamless as it could be. Now I can control the amount of data which actually is shared here. Now you're attending business meetings, you're meeting friends, people, you want to drop your contact card. This is an easy method. And what happens is when you do this, you actually are able to record where you shared which amount of data. And then it is as simple as that, right? Now, this could be sharing your bank statements. This could be sharing your medical history. If you're visiting a doctor, and if the doctor has a similar application on their side, the data terminal, you tap your smart card, and they will be able to retrieve a certain amount of information, which again, you will be able to see, how it is done. Let me go back to a simple example of what happens in the case of, let's say, when you check into a hotel, right? This is an example where, let me just do this. Sorry about a bit of clumsiness here. Right. So today, when you go to, for example, a hotel, right? You drop in your data credentials, right? I mean, they will ask you for an address proof, and 3 documents are valid at that point of time, which could be either your Aadhaar card, your driver license, or voter card, in that sense, right? Now, they take a photocopy of the data, they'll keep it, and you left the hotel after 2 or 3 days, or maybe a week, could be any amount of time, but you have no idea what is happening with that. You have absolutely no idea. And you've not only given the data for yourself, but if you're traveling with colleagues, your friends, your family, you're giving away everything. In your entire time, just take a moment to think, have you ever gone back and asked those people, how long are they going to keep the data? Or even after you've checked out, are they going to destroy that piece of paper or the photocopy which they've done? Next time when you go, please ask that question. So here is an example, right? This is what we are saying when we said, let's change it. Let's make it safe. Let's make it data safe for all of us. Now, this example, just like you see your Paytm and Google Pay QR codes, what we are implementing is at different hotels, when you go, you will have a QR code, which is just like this, which gives you the name of the location, right, where you are. And the reason, you can see guest check-in, right? There is a reason why you are sharing the data. And then, of course, there's a QR code, right? Now, this QR code works if you actually scan this QR code, right? And if you can try it, and it actually works. If you just scan this QR code, what will happen is this will take you to a screen which will open up like this. And on this screen, what you are able to do is you're able to see, right? The screen will just switch. Just give me a second. Yeah, the screen will switch now. Sorry, I'm doing this on the phone, so it's a bit clumsy, but yeah. So there you see. So it says now, what is that? What is the place? Which you saw, it was Monaco Hotel. So it comes up, it shows you and gives you the address of the place. Now you see the data transfer reason. It says hotel check-in. Then at the bottom, it says consent duration, which means how long the hotel is required to retain your data. And typically, if you ask them this question, they'll say that we are expected to retain this for 30 days because the police or the local administration comes and request a list of guests or people who are staying at the hotel. They're able to provide that, right? And the next thing which you see is what you are required to submit, right? Which says full name, and that's just for a correlation, but it says an identity document. And once you put your email address and you go forward with it, right, you will see the option to submit one of them, right? And this is in a simple way of how you can actually see implementation of data privacy in action. A very simple, example. I think they've implemented it. So anyway, this goes. I'll not take a further time. I mean, this is as simple as that, right? So this is a very simple case of consent-based data exchange, right? And you can imagine the number of fields can grow up. Instead of a hotel here, it could be a bank, it could be a fintech, it could be an insurance company, it could be academic admissions, right? So it goes into multiple domains, right? But this is the simplest form of data exchange protocol that can be seen, right? So with this, I wanted to thank everyone, and let's now go and look at the questions now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for this amazing presentation. Again, we have two questions in the chat box. I'll speak one by one, and maybe, am I audible, sir?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, amazing. So one by one, I'll go. Also, we have few questions that were mentioned in the in the registration form itself. So
Sure.
that after these two are over, like we'll move over to that set of questions. So starting with the first one in the chat box, we have: our gross enrollment ratio dropped significantly from class 5 to pre-university. Government wants to bring to 30 or so. Education is primary step for all other upskill development. I think maybe the speaker wanted you to comment on the same. Sorry, the
Yeah.
audience wanted to comment on the same. Yeah.
Right. So there's a question from Madhu. I'm trying to see what the question is. So education is a primary step for all the skill development. They want to bring up the enrollment ratio, right? So for enrollment, so this is a slightly different topic, but if you're trying to say on a general topic, I can just make a very general comment on this. Uh, to improve enrollment ratios, you have to see if your audience is able to see value in what the content of the education system is, and how does it make them grow, right? I mean, let me give you a simple example. I mean, this presentation itself, right? If I go and talk about data privacy to the taxi driver or the auto rickshaw which was standing outside the building, I mean, he does not really care about it, right? I mean, he at this stage of time, he's not really worried because that's not his immediate objective, right? So to increase enrollment ratios, there has to be some aspirational and there has to be some motivational factor to the target audience, right? They need to see what it brings them, what value it adds to them, what benefit it brings to them, right? So you might have heard about meal at campus and lunch breaks, and those were things to motivate it, but they only work up to a certain point. I mean, you have to connect them to a value basis of the education, right? And growth, and if they continue to learn, what comes out of that, right? So that is something which has to be done, and I believe there might be programs, but again, there's more to discuss on this rather than just saying looking at few numbers. I mean, it's a good question. It's relevant to what we are doing as a society, but of course, it needs a much larger address from someone who's really into this domain, right? So we can talk offline if you're interested in discussing this further. We have one from Anjana Krishna who says, I would like to understand a little bit more about what Aadhaar does to ensure our data privacy. That's okay, if you want to take that.
Okay, so Aadhaar as UIDAI at the authority, it does make sure that people who are dealing with Aadhaar cards and extracting information basis Aadhaar are registered and are duly complying with the relevant requirements of UIDAI. So there is a particular act for this. When you have to share information to other authorities, you might as well they give you the ability to be able to share it in a masked manner. It's called a masked Aadhaar. They also control as to how the processor who is obtaining the Aadhaar details is further sharing those details. So this is what measures that Aadhaar Act has provided, and of course, Aadhaar detail is a sensitive personal information, and therefore the DPDP Act is there to provide a similar protection that it will to other sensitive information. I hope this answers your question.
Okay. So now we'll move to the next question that we received via the registration form. That is, how will DPDP Act evolve with emerging agentic AIs? I have posted in the chat box also.
So the act, yes, of course, we're all waiting for its implementation, and it's not in force as yet. But of course, when we do start with something new, it takes some time to evolve. Now, with AI, where it is, especially the generative AI, where it is actually bringing answers to our queries on a regular basis, our information being there in the public domain can very well be utilized or misutilized by the various AI based engines to create I would say create, because it will actually be making up things basis our information, answers to our queries. Now, how DPDP Act is expected to evolve is to ensure that our information does not reach these AI engines. In my opinion, it should be destroyed by the very data fiduciary or the data processor the minute it solved its purpose. And that is how not the act, but the implementation of the act is expected to evolve.
Right, and to add to that, I mean, technology is evolving. So while you might have experienced public agents such as ChatGPT or Google Gemini or even Grok from X, right? So there are these are public implementations. Just like you have the worldwide internet, anything which is out in the public domain, they will be able to index it, read it, summarize it, and present it to you in your chat and conversations, right? But when you talk about AI as a business implementation, right, or even agentic AIs, there will be implementations which will look at data in a defined construct, which means if it's gated data, if it's financial data, if it's bank account data, you will only be able to interact with the agent which has the permission to go and retrieve that set of data and records from the bank. If you just go to chat gpt and try to read the data, you'll not be able to link to it because it's gated, right? The information is secured. So that gating of data will happen at all points of time, right? So dpdp, while it will evolve, also it will evolve with what the technology does, right? In addition to AI, there is another concept where a lot of the dpdp which does is it depends on credentials and verifications and presentation of data. Blockchain is used extensively for implementation of verified credentials. But you know that anything similarly as internet, anything which goes on the blockchain is public. Now, one way is while the information is available in public, if it's encrypted, unless someone has the key, that information has no value, right? So while a public implementation using blockchain can be done, but if there's no key or there's no accessibility to read that information is considered then again protected because it's not available, it's not readable to the public domain, right? So AI, very good question by the way. AI, agentic AI, blockchain, anything which is public, gated, encrypted, these rules guidelines will come as part of again Data Prevention Act. You'll see more and more of these clarifications coming up over the near future, and then I'm pretty sure that there are quite a bit of smart people, working behind the scenes in these organizations, right? And I've met with UI at some point of time, just about a few days back. They are implementing even a smarter version of the Aadhaar, right? So there are more things which are coming, and you'll see such news coming up around end of March, early April, right? So there's good stuff coming up. You'll see more of integration happening between your DigiLocker and between your Aadhaar, and then again interfaces of how the information goes, right? Today, if you authenticate some applications, and if it's trying to read your Aadhaar, you will see a similar consent mechanism. It will show what data is going. It will show who is requesting the data, and it has those details. So you see the DPDP and Aadhaar that they're coming up closer. Of course, they have to work on, making sure it's seamless, but that is something which is already happening behind the scenes. So I'm confident that the implementations which will come from such organizations, it is going to make our lives easier, right, and much more going into the future.
And just to add to it, DPDP already protects how even agentic AI will look into it or implement it, because the process is set as to how you take the information, how you can process it, and how you can implement it. So even if there is an agentic AI model in place, which party has the ability to take the decision as to how the particular algorithm or the particular software has to function, it still cannot move out from the framework of DPDP.
Good. I hope that answers that. Next question is from again Anjana Krishna. I'll just read it out. Also, I would like to connect to understand at a more deeper level the finer nuances of DPDP Act, since we will be creating an Indianized data set on facial expressions, which is very sensitive and personal. Of course, that's right in the zone of data privacy and sensitivity. So, of course, please reach out to Angira or reach out to ARTpark to can connect you with us. So that can be done, right? Thank you. Going to the next, which is from Bharat. How do we know that the data which we have in this application is enough for particular work? It is not a case that all the domain asks for only particular information. Even in medical, some can expect additional information from patient. That's a very good question. You want
And
to?
that's exactly why it protects our data principles, especially the DPDP Act. Because right now, what happens is we only get the right to tick mark the privacy policy and proceed. And that's how we all do, right? I don't think any of us would have read Amazon's privacy policy. But now, going forward, they have to expressly mention as to what all they will take and for what purpose will they take. So now, a medical or a hospital cannot take information about your ITR because you have the right to be able to control how much information you want to give. Of course, we're all in that zone of getting stuck where we don't want to share that information, thinking they're going to extract useless information for us, and therefore the result is only not being able to use that app. So ultimately we get frustrated and we tick mark. But a very simple, or maybe a not so simple solution is to go back to the ancient times or uh, usual times where you mention to the hospital or any other authority that is wanting your data is to be able to give your hard copy, that you use this and you destroy in front of me, because that is the only relevant information that you need. So for example, we go to the doctor, we can go with a file that I don't want to let you get into my system and utilize that information that is there on the system, but just take my hard copy file. But the solution that Nuvo comes up is exactly that. So for example, you want to show the doctor that what is your medical history, then you have the ability to be able to control that the party is able to access only that particular information. So this is a good replacement to that to the situation where we don't have an option, we have to agree to the take, versus coming to a situation where we know XYZ is what I want to share, and here it is my smart card, I am okay to share only X, Y, and Z.
And that's a good question. It has happened to me. So I was booking a real life example, right? And you might face this. Uh, I was booking a ticket to Dubai. It was for a conference we were going. And one of the very reputed travel agents, right? I mean, to get a visa, right? And it is a very standard process. You share documents to them and they'll process the visa. It's all online, digital, everything is fine. So while I was talking to the supervisor, the club, the agent there at the travel company, right? They asked me for my PAN card, and this is true, by the way. They asked me for the PAN card, and I said, to process a visa, you don't need a PAN card. It's not even in the list of documents to be submitted, right? So why do you need a PAN card? So it went around about 5 minutes or so. They said, nee, we need this. It's our own policy. I said, okay, it's your policy. It's not a policy. It's not a requirement from the embassy, right? UAE embassy does not require a PAN card. Yes, I would understand they would need an ID card, which is in the form of Aadhaar or something, but PAN card does not do anything beyond. So I don't think you need a PAN card. So they tried to do that, and after that 5 minutes, I said, fair enough. Yeah, you send me a copy of your policy, and of course, bring your supervisor on the line, or get me a clarity that why do you need PAN card to process my visa application, where everything is, all the documents are submitted. So after 30 seconds or 1 minute, they come on back online, they gave me the answer that they don't need the PAN card to process it. So very exactly, just about the question you said, people will ask for extra information if they can get away with it. But this is where the DPDP will give the power back to you, specify that exactly what data has to be shared, why it has to be shared, for how much, what duration it has to be shared, right? And then the biggest thing, in case you missed it, to remind all of you, is you can revoke access. That is one of the powerful things, and that's where a lot of technology implementation will come, where you can revoke access as well. So we'll move along. It's almost past 7. Thank you for the answer. Good, you found it useful. Does DPDP Act include voice? Interesting. Voice is unique to individuals.
Sorry, where's the question?
Voice. You see this? Does DPDP Act include voice as a form of data?
Yes, so anything that is shared online So DPDP Act regulates information that is in a soft version. But the difference is that your voice or my voice, it is not personally identifiable. Maybe Amitabh Bachchan's voice is, and that might be a right that he might have that nobody else can take it, but that would more be a question of copyright, I would say, not DPDP.
Yeah. And some banking applications you might see. I mean, this is a fancy thing which comes. In fact, when I log into my bank, they say that you can clone your voice and you can use it as a fingerprint. So in a way, I understand you're saying that yes, it's unique to an individual.
Okay.
Right? But again, yes, I mean, if I'm singing, if I'm doing something, yes, voice is unique, and in certain ways you can use it. I believe, yeah, I mean, it might.
Of course. So if that comes to cloning and using it as a password, yes, it will.
Yeah, it will. So it's a good. Next is from.
Sorry, it is a limited area for us lawyers, so it takes a while to understand. Thanks, Saurabh, for that.
No, but it's good. That's why you need all aspects. You need people to ask us good questions, right? So we're actually very thankful to all of you. So
Absolutely.
Diksha from ARTtalks, her question is: what measures are required to bring awareness about personal data among community individuals? This is a question from Dr. Satish K, National Program Specialist, Health from Vadvani AI.
So more and more advocacy about the DPDP Act and spreading awareness by conducting sessions would be really recommended. And I can see you're into the health sector. So of course, hospitals are very, very active about putting posters everywhere wherever there is a legal compliance. So for example, if it's a PNDT matter, they are very active in saying that we do not do PNDT prohibited activities. Say for example, it is hazardous waste disposal. They are very, very active in putting posters. So putting a poster near a reception, near outside the doctor's cabin, or holding road shows outside these areas would be very, very helpful.
Right, and conduct events like this. We're happy to come and educate as many people as we can. Right?
So, absolutely, need of the hour.
Yeah, and of course, talk to ARTpark. They'll help you set up events, more of these. Bharat, thank you. Yes, good question. So yes, this works in both the ways, and yes, they have to be clear about what data they're asking. This is part of the act and the implementation as well. So you'll be very clear on what data you have to share when. Next question is high costs of implementation. SMEs may find it costly and complex to implement the necessary data protection infrastructure, such as hiring data, DPOs, conducting audits. How do you plan to overcome them? Second question, how would it improve? So yeah, let's see the first one.
So yeah, the first one, much before this act had come into place or published, it's still not in force. There are a large number of entities who are actually processing your data in a protected manner. We do advise a large number of startups or other fintech entities who are actually taking data, managing it in a very secured manner. They are ISO 27001 compliant, so ensuring that your data is not getting leaked, and they are not expensive at all. So if we look into their cost, they would charge for a bulk SME company who's ensuring bulk data management. They would be able to do it for $5 to $10 also. So it is not very expensive. You just have to be able to find the right partner for your job. So why do you want a particular level of data and for what purpose? You will have the right partner for it. And secondly, can I get some more clarification on how would it be interoperable with GDPR? It is something very similar to GDPR. I don't know if I understand it correctly. So GDPR is in Europe and DPDP is for India. If you look into the content and how they are structured, they are very similar. So they are extending similar protection to data that is sitting in India of people who are data owners based out of India. Whereas GDPR is there in Europe, similar level of protection is there.
Yeah, and to add to that, this also brings in. I mean, if you're talking about switching, I mean, data moving out of borders, right? So then again, data residency comes to the picture, and versus again, if the law differs in two places, for example, if you talk about trademark and patent law, I mean, India has its own laws, but then there is an international patent law as well, right? We have to build bridges. So what might happen is with our legal team and with domain experts, right? Such as, you might have a unique perspective from a particular domain, right? I believe consultations like Angira mentioned in the beginning. That's a good way to include that public feedback, because again, uh, administration and lawmakers, I mean, they have one view of what it should be. They can lay out the framework, but I believe this will see a lot of industry collaboration and input, because this is very inclusive, and this is huge, right? So there will be consultations going on, just as we have seen. I mean, post implementation of even the account aggregator, which was RBI, the Samiti is doing it, and a lot of industry collaboration is happening. Again, on the health side, if you see, I've been to some of their annual conferences as well. There are every state health departments, government individuals, private individuals, companies that are coming and putting their heads together to see how to actually make it work. It's not just about releasing a document or a law or something to that effect, but actually seeing how it works. And I believe with the innovation that has happened in India, very positive with all the great minds, and I mean, from the questions itself, we can see. I think this is going to be a good, right? I mean, we come a little bit late, but I would say we come at the time when we have understood enough to see how to implement it. The amount of digitization which has happened over the last 5 to 6, 7, 10 years gives brings us at the right spot, right point in time to be able to implement this now. Doing it way early would be too cumbersome, right? I mean, not enough use cases to actually do it, and doing it a little later would, be a little bit on the far side of it, right? So I think we're at the right time, and of course, collaboration and participation is the key to make it work, along with educating everyone, right? So I think we are just nearing on the time. So that question was from Mr. Vikas Das. So thank you, sir, for the question as well. I believe we will take this as the last one from Krishna Singh. How do you differentiate between actual voice based consent versus deep fake cheating? Very good. And my addition to that would be, how do you as a user, how do you go and challenge that, and what recourse you could have from a legal point if someone does that?
So that will actually go into evidence finding by the experts, and experts like you will actually end up telling whether the consent that was actually provided was the original one, or was it based out of deepfake cheating. So if it is the latter, then yes, it will call for criminal action. Whereas if it is your own consent, which has been proved by experts like you before the court, then it gets a clean chit. It is more of a criminal action,
Right.
criminal law matter.
And I tell you, I mean, as much as I know, one of the IITs, I've been in touch with some of the students. They're actually, in fact, working on this exact scenario where they are trying to identify if the voice is a clone, is a deep fake, or it's an actual voice. So they're doing, just as you would do a deep fake, now that what they're doing is they're doing a reverse engineering on the same stuff to identify if it's a cloned or a machine generated copy of the voice itself, right? So very interesting. I mean, and I can tell you stuff is happening. I mean, we are working on our own version of the voice because of the consent mechanism. Like I said, I mean, places where people are not comfortable with reading, writing, or typing. Again, they're happy with talking. So how do you provide the consent, and how do you actually differentiate between consent which a person has provided versus something which has been recorded on a phone or on any other computer device, and kind of you bring it close to the mic and you read. So of course, there's a lot of innovation has to happen. And if you have these questions, and if you find people around you, people who are working in technology domain, people who are working as students, engineering colleges, otherwise go and talk to them, give them these examples, right? These are actual, if you can think of this as a problem, there should be someone to solve this. And today, as much as the innovation that we see in India, talk to some people and they might be able to come and probably build a great big startup, and maybe they'll even go on Shark Tank, who knows, right? And you might be able to say, this is the idea which I gave them and I mentored them to build a solution. So you're all part of it. Yeah. So I think we'll close with that. Diksha, back to you.
Okay, thank you everyone. Thank you to our esteemed speakers over here for taking out the time for this session, and hope every one of you enjoyed the session, understood a lot. I'll be posting a feedback form in the chat box over here. And okay, Bharat, over to you for closing this session.
while Bharat comes online, just to add that we'll have some interesting giveaway coming out of this. We'll share it with the Art Park team to share it with the rest of the audience who are able to present today. Right? So some nice gifts are coming your way. So, thank you.
Uh, are we audible?
Yes,
Okay, is Bharat audible?
not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
Just unmute it and I'll speak from here on.
Okay.
Unmute it.
Unmuted.
Okay. Dear leaders, please find the link to the feedback questionnaire we have created for you in the chat box. Please fill it right away. We'll address it as soon as possible. Thank you, dear speakers, for sharing your experiences and providing such a valuable insights on data privacy and security. I'm sure our audience have gained a lot of uh, actionable takeaway. Dear audience, if you would like to connect with our speakers, please let us know at skilling@artpark.in. We'll be facilitating it further. Just an update, we have our next session which is scheduled for next month, March 6, 2025, on the topic understanding and navigating the capital stacks as a deep tech founder. For leading venture capital film, Green at Atha, tune in Art Park LinkedIn handle for the updates. Have a great evening, everyone. Goodbye.
Yep.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for joining with us today. And
Bye. Thank you.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you all. Have a nice day. Bye.